see how things are going. So I know you've got things to do with Damien, and maybe you're digesting those. I get that.
Hi everybody, and thanks for joining me on this live session, and a warm welcome to everyone watching on Catch Up. Today we're going to explore how to curate knowledge from your SMEs that can be quickly distributed and embedded into programs using user-generated video. My name is Carl Hodler. I'm co-founder of Storytagger, which is a platform that helps you curate workplace stories from your frontline people, managers, and SMEs in bite-sized, ready-to-share videos. One of the things that we've seen over the past few years is while technology can be a great enabler, helping curators encourage, nurture, and coach their people into creating content has been a big part in how we've supported our customers. So today I'm going to share why curation skills are becoming an essential part of the L&D toolkit, what the limitations are of gathering off-the-shelf materials, and how to curate knowledge and experiences in a shareable format directly from your people. If you'd like more resources in this area, then you can easily find me and Storytagger on LinkedIn and Twitter. Just search for my name, Carl Hodler, or Storytagger on any of the social platforms, and you will find us. Okay, so let me see if my slide deck is going to move forwards. Bear with me. There we go. So what is curation? Well, in its simplest form, it's gathering relevant materials from articles, blogs, videos, LinkedIn Learning, news items, podcasts, radio shows, a whole gamut of materials that you can just readily find like on the internet. And you're using that content in its original format or repurposing it into something more appropriate for your audience. Now, curation is not new. It's been happening offline for centuries and for online learning with decades, with increasing levels of sophistication. Now, the thing that's sort of changed in the digital space is the distribution channels that are available to learning and HR teams, and they've dramatically expanded. So we've got learning experience platforms, social channels, chat and learning management systems, or even creating more spaces for curation within those platforms. And just like in the consumer space, curators need to keep resources fresh and up to date and relevant in order to help people develop habits around using this information to solve problems or develop skills. Now, obviously, 2020 has seen a dramatic acceleration of change because of the pandemic, and we've had furlough, return to work, social distancing, lockdowns, like evolving regulation. While in society, we've had the effects of the economic downturn and Black Lives Matter, and in the workplace, digital transformation has progressed years in the space of months. And, soon to be compounding this, we've got, some flavor of Brexit going to be affecting all our, organizations. So, I mean, L&D teams are stretched both in terms of budget and people power while being asked to do much more with less, and crucially being asked to deliver against some very specific business needs that are kind of coming up from a lot of the challenges that we've experienced over the last few months. And our people are stretched as well. They're more busy than ever before, stressed, working in kind of sometimes quite new environments with all the kind of social distancing and other restrictions that have been brought into our workplaces. And also a lot of people are still having to work from home. And a recent study by Slack showed that 72% of knowledge workers want to continue with this hybrid working when it's all over. And Jane Daly will be talking a little bit more about this in a session this afternoon. But what's really missing is that sort of sense of belonging. And as teams are working remotely, content can really be part of that mix that helps reinforce your values and culture. So, it's not always easy to get the right information to share. And with the complexities of this year, companies have to be kind of even, they've got more specific needs. And sometimes generic content can miss out on the detail or the nuance that's needed to demonstrate relevance and value. And this goes back to us all being busy, maybe a bit distracted, and certainly dealing with lots of priorities. So any information that we're looking to support us in our roles, it really has to speak to our current need, and it very much needs to be relevant. Our organization's values and cultures are more important than ever, really. They can be the glue that hold us together through tough times. And ideally, any information we curate needs to support this, and it certainly can't contravene it. It can also be challenging to source materials that use the specific language and phrases that people in our organization are using. And often when materials don't fully embed in our workplace experience or our experience of the workplace, it's not guaranteed that we'll be able to join up the dots to identify it. And even if we manage to tick all these boxes, will people trust this third-party content enough to do something correctly, differently, or change their behavior? So knowledge sharing and co-creation has really become a priority in 2020. Curating content directly from the people within our organization means they'll be able to recognize the expert and be more likely to know their backstory or trust what they say. The content will be laser focused to the specific needs of our organizations. Because it's internal, you're by the virtue of the fact of curating this content and sharing it, you're bringing people together and also recognizing talent within your organization and surfacing and celebrating that expertise. It also enables you to bake in key pillars of your culture to help it develop and grow, even in these sort of challenging circumstances. And once you develop these processes, it can be very fast and very cost-effective to curate and distribute. Now, many of you will be doing some of this already. You'll more than likely be using subject matter experts to support program development. So giving them more guidance to start making content themselves may not be such a huge stretch. You'll have interaction on social learning channels and internal chat, or perhaps you've built communities of practice. So you can think about formalizing some of these processes or identifying content ambassadors that you can support to help create and share content elsewhere. If you're creating podcasts or internal radio, your presenters and guests are already creating knowledge and experiences that you can repurpose and extend. If there are employees who are already sharing career stories or potentially mentoring, you can explore how you can scale, democratize or amplify those experiences. And, remember the video interviews that we used to do pre-COVID, you could look at the people who contributed there and think about enabling them to do that in more of a self-service environment. And video interviews are an interesting case study in the sort of wider challenges we face when scaling knowledge sharing. And taking that from a heavily curated and produced activity to something where we're relying on people to create content in more of a user-generated fashion. So back when we used to send video crews out to kind of film people, we had an appointment. People couldn't really escape the interview process, no matter how much they hated the idea of being in front of a camera. The narrative is reasonably well predefined when you get interviewed, so you don't need to worry about constructing an interesting story arc, although there is occasionally the chance of surprises. And even the reflective process is quite moderated, so all the jumbled up ideas in our heads can be enticed into the narrative structure, regardless of how many retakes are necessary. The camera work and the sound is all done for you, so no technical skills are required there, and the editor makes the whole thing look seamless. And lastly, you don't even have to worry about GDPR or sharing big video files to secure networks. All of this was taken care of by the L&D team. So as the creator, the person sharing that knowledge, sharing that experience, you didn't have much to do apart from be kind of coached and guided through that process. And taking into account the cost and the amount of time that video shoots consumed and their very sort of limited scalability, you see how curation really needs to be as light touch as possible for us to scale this kind of content sharing, this content creation across our organizations. But just because everyone's got a phone in their pocket that's, really capable of filming amazing quality content, technology isn't the magic bullet. We've got the cameras, we've got super fast internet, and we know our people have this expertise, but people are currently not using this technology to share knowledge, experience, or information as they do in the consumer space, and certainly not at scale. So I'd like to look at some of the reasons this behavior from the consumer world isn't translating into the workplace. And firstly, as consumers, we're really looking at our kind of, personal brand, our personal individual consumer brand. And we're often talking about something that we're interested in when we're sharing in sort of consumer social places. And that passion means that we're driven to create without necessarily relying on any extrinsic motivation. And while we might not be so concerned about our expertise, even though, because it's a hobby or an interest or supporting a brand or product we like, it's really not going to be the end of the world if something goes slightly wrong. There's no pressure on timing. We can use any tools that we want to create the content or to share files, and we also feel we have control over our own privacy, even if the terms take longer to read than War and Peace. But if we compare that experience with creating content for work, we're looking at our professional brand. This is our career, and we have to make sure that we're continually positively reinforcing it. We're being asked to produce materials. So there's an expectation that we need to do this. And we often can be struck down with some form of imposter syndrome, believing that there's far better people to talk about this than me. We may be used to ask new tools or processes that are unfamiliar to meet the stricter IT or privacy standards. While all of these are quite straightforward to address, when they're ignored, they can really result in a lack of engagement. And plenty of teams have overcome these and have been curating knowledge in this way to a really powerful effect. These are just some of the areas that are having an impact. And from our own experience, working with Amazon, Cadent Gas, Bouygues Energy, they've been supporting virtual inductions, leadership programs, development sessions. We've been seeing teams capturing subject matter expertise on a huge range of topics, like real world tips, data security whilst remote working to support compliance, good practice directly from frontline to drop into digital learning resources. It's very fast. Once these subject matter experts or frontline people share the content, it can be very easily put into resources. So it's a very agile and quick process. And recently, Bupa and City and Guilds have been sharing end-of-year updates and story montages to recognise success and congratulate colleagues. And at this time of year, I always really enjoy spotting all the kind of Christmas-themed stories coming through on our platform. It definitely kicks off our festive season, seeing that content come through. So here are some tips and processes and guides that we've learned over the last 3 years that will help you curate fantastic knowledge from your people in a ready to share distributable format. And you know, this is the typical kind of expression on someone's face when you just like out the blue ask them to record something. You know, hey, that's a great idea. Can you just share that on a quick video? People are often a little bit horrified by that idea. And for some people, going to the dentist for a root canal is preferable to recording a video for work. And, you know, whilst, you know, it's kind of an amusing way to look at it, but it's also a good starting point. It's something we always really think about when we're helping organizations frame invitations. I've lost track of the number of times learning developers have told me that their people won't share on video, and you know, it's by no means impossible to get people to do that, even for the most kind of difficult to reach people and communities within in your organization. And one part of the science of encouraging, I use the word science very loosely, by the way, but one part of the, you know, the way we encourage people to do stuff they don't naturally want to do when they're first presented with the idea is about value and framing. And one of the first tools that we have to support this is our employee experience and organizational values. Now, some teams have, you know, the idea of sharing knowledge and experience baked into their organizational values. For some organizations, it's a little bit looser, but if there's anything in there that you can use to start winning hearts and minds, tying it into those bigger purposes is a really powerful way of framing why you're looking for people to do this. It's essential to really clearly share the value that focuses on, you know, how sharing this knowledge or information benefits the creator, the person making the or sharing the knowledge, their immediate team, and the wider organization. And this really resonates and cuts through, because while people do like to help others and see how they can do things that will enable and support their colleagues, they also really like to see within that context how it helps them too. And you need to start developing confidence as well and tell them why their story is important, and reduce the risk of that sense or that feeling of imposter syndrome, or people thinking they haven't got anything of value to contribute. If you're using technology like StoryTagger, it's really important to explain why you're using that technology and how it will make their life easier, and the job in hand faster, and potentially how it benefits your team too as the curators, how it makes your life easier, and helps protect privacy and aligns to GDPR and you know, IT security and stuff like that. And the last thing is definitely include a deadline. We know people have always been really busy when it comes to asking them to record a video, but people are really legitimately super busy right now, and jobs to be done often get ranked by time pressure. Your campaign may be time sensitive, so it shouldn't be hard to justify, but that's a point I'll come back to in a bit. So number 2, creative scaffolding. There are a couple of key tricks to curating fantastic user-generated content. And the first one is to make the creative process feel absolutely frictionless, a bit like the traditional video interview, in which you're kind of being taken along a journey on rails. You don't have to think too hard about what you're doing. You're always being nudged into the next step. And the second is to make the finished product feel 10 times better than the creator ever expected, and something that they're really proud to share. Now, while you're used to dealing with subject matter experts in the production of materials, a lot of frontline people or employees, and even leaders in kind of quite a few instances, may not necessarily see themselves through this lens. So you need to think about the extra support they need to create something they're going to be proud of. And one of the challenges around enabling people to share learning content is helping them effectively reflect on their experiences. I appreciate this won't be news to any of you. But again, this is one of the invisible processes in the video interview, you know, the silent moderator guiding that reflective process and surfacing all the really interesting stuff that people, you know, had in their heads. And what we've seen is when people are making content themselves without guidance or curation, so if they are actually filming on their phone, it's really common to get very vanilla content that doesn't really offer a huge amount of value to the audience and is probably a little bit long, a bit rambling. So to be able to help people dig a bit deeper and surface that good stuff that's going to inspire, influence and motivate others is a really important part of that scaffolding. And to do this, you need to help people construct a great narrative. Now, while we're great at sharing stories, so if you told me a story today, I'd be able to really easily share it tomorrow. But crafting new ones is a rare skill. And remember, this is a work video. So if you want or need people to watch the whole thing, it does need a strong structure. It needs to deliver value at key stages. It needs to be short, and it needs to be well kind of put together and formatted without putting a huge amount of pressure or editing work on your busy team. On StoryTagger, the scaffolding supports reflection and storytelling. And as a curator, you can break a kind of longer, complex story down into bite-sized parts that do create that engaging story arc. And so you could help somebody who's never made a video before open with a classic YouTube intro, like, this is what I'm going to share today. My name is Carl Hodler, and this is why I'm sharing it. It's a really powerful way of helping people kind of learn new ways of sharing materials, but in a format you know will be successful and engaging to the audience. As a curator, you can also add prompts to the story part. And these are the things that support that reflective thinking and surfacing the interesting and valuable ideas. Now, these can relate to common experiences, but they need to be open-ended enough to encourage people to think about their own story. And both of these aspects of the scaffolding that we support help develop confidence and produce people who've never made a video before feel confident, comfortable doing it, and produce better results. Ambassadors have always been really important in, you know, when you're looking to get people to contribute to creating learning materials. And in the content creation side of things, they're still super important. And a lot of the skills that support creating user-generated content within the workplace have alignment with community management skills, and ambassadors can help you accelerate engagement from your wider community. And that's because you can use their content to show everyone else the thing. And by that, I mean, it's kind of leading by example. It's often easier when we see something rather than having to read a description to get a better understanding of what we need to do. And ambassadors also provide the opportunity to test and refine the creative scaffolding. You know, you can watch the ambassadors' content and spot any weaknesses or opportunities from the responses. And, you know, it's an important thing to constantly be stress testing how you're supporting the creation and curation of user-generated content in the workplace, and take advantage of every opportunity to refine and improve how you're supporting future creators. And one of the things that you know, kind of need to do all the way through is developing that trust. Trust is so important when curating content from people. And as you saw from the differences between the kind of consumer and the workplace sharing, you know, that you've got some kind of key principles that you need to make people feel more comfortable and confident about within that curation process. So here, GDPR and privacy policies emerge from you know, the darkness to become very useful tools that can help you be open and transparent about how content will be used. And what does that mean? It's about being clear on how the content is going to be used. Is it internal? Is it going to get used in a specific program? Is it going to be shared on the social channels? Is it going to be public facing? You know, is it supporting recruitment? If you're sharing career stories, how long is it going to be used for? Is it going to be, you know, am I going to be seeing my face on the screens on every tube station for the next 5 weeks? Be really transparent about how it's going to be used, and start developing trust. And the other thing that you need to be able to give people is the ability to withdraw consent. Now, they probably won't, but it definitely makes people feel more in control of the materials they are creating for you. So asking people to create content usually requires more than one email. And this is something that we picked up on from a very early stage with StoryTagger. And it's really natural for people to prevaricate and put off this kind of task until the last minute. So nudges and reminders are really important, and having that expectation that you will need to chase people a little bit is very important when you're kind of planning out how these campaigns are going to run. Now, if you can automate this process that sends out nudges and reminders, you should do, because it can be quite a time soak, because these messages do need to be personalized, and if you deviate from that, there's a chance that people could ignore the messages. You know, kind of, you know, those nudges and reminders could fall a little bit flat. When I'm talking about personalizing, you need to think about the journey that people are going on with the content creation. So, you know, they start off with an invitation, then they'll be looking at examples, maybe planning their own story, then they may have started recording, they may have finished recording, but they are, you know, maybe lost confidence in what they've done. If you can know where people are at all stages in that journey, you can really support them with subtle messaging to move them forward. So that's kind of why automation is a really key part of that process, because it enables you to kind of get all of that messaging and content in at the beginning, and then people can get the nudges and reminders as they need them. And the other thing is to remember is to avoid silly deadlines. So it goes back to the point I was making earlier. You will have a deadline for your campaign. But you need to think about when people will do this activity and plan around that rather than your own needs. We see content coming in from StoryTagger at all times of day. Some people like to do it when they get home from, you know, kind of working in a store, or if they are working in an office to find a bit of space. Maybe they're sitting in their car in the car park after work. Maybe they're taking the dog for a walk. It's really difficult to tell when people will create this kind of content for you. So make sure that you give them enough time to be able to, you know, pick a time and a space that they're comfortable with. And you've got to remember that in all your communications, the value proposition needs to be consistently baked in. And when the content comes in, as a curator, you'll experience the equivalent of, you know, planting the flag on the top of Everest. You'll have worked hard to put all the framework and the processes in place to get this content, but your people will have pushed themselves out of their comfort zones and created something of real value that you can use instantly. And also with repurposing, you can use in an awful lot of different formats and on different channels as well. It's really important to celebrate this, and, you know, don't become complacent about what you've all achieved. Be sure to send everyone a thank you message, celebrate what they've shared, and reinforce the value. And if you've had time to prove the value of what you've done, then share that with them as well. And it'll give your people a really fantastic story to share with colleagues and help develop this as a kind of wider behavior. And don't forget to look out for those future ambassadors. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so developing and growing, it's really in your interest to develop and grow this activity across the organization. And one of the cool things is that we've seen, you know, a lot of parts of the organization have been trying to do this kind of thing for a while, but we see that learning teams have got quite a unique opportunity to start developing this as a behavior to kind of amplify experiences and knowledges across the organization in response to, you know, kind of business needs that are constantly surfacing. So, you know, let your internal comms team know that you've achieved something that they've been trying to do at scale for years. Maybe the recruitment team as well, who are potentially still, you know, sharing text-based career stories to try and attract new people into the organization. And get your senior leaders to buy in and get involved as well. And now, don't be surprised if they're a little bit reluctant, because, you know, you've got to remember that they're used to having video crews turn up and do all the work for them. But once they realize the impact this kind of content can have and how easy that you've made the creative process, they'll be hooked and won't turn back. And we've got a few comms teams using StoryTagger who have gone through this journey, and their senior leaders are now using short videos as one of the key ways they're communicating with their teams, especially over lockdown. So sharing information about furlough, redundancies, unfortunately, and sort of back to work kind of, you know, operations, a really powerful way of sharing kind of complex messages in a very kind of, you know, personal and authentic way. And also use these behaviors to prove the impact that learning is having on your organization. And we've seen this so many times where a montage of frontline people talking about learning, or even leaders talking about what they've taken in from a program, and creating a montage of their reflections or their how they've translated that into practice, can be so more impactful to senior leaders or C-suite than just data alone. And, you know, you're probably reinforcing a lot of the positive behaviors that could be part of your organization's culture change or behaviors you're moving towards as well. So, you know, reinforcing the value to senior stakeholders through the voice of your people is a really positive thing to do.
Hi, Carl. It's David from the World of Learning team.
Hi, David.
Hi there. We've actually reached the end of the time scale for the presentation, but we've had 2 or 3 questions, so I just wanted to go through those with you.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry I went over. I realized I've got my notes and stuff over my timer, so I missed that, but I'd love to hear some questions.
Sure. So this is from both Helen Bound and Caroline at Raising the Bar, and they were just inquiring to see whether you've got any real life examples to share with them.
Yeah, absolutely. If you search for StoryTagger on YouTube, we don't often have publicly shareable videos, but we have worked with some other conferences. We've worked with Women in Learning and a few other campaigns where we are able to share videos in the public domain. So everything that we are able to share goes up onto our YouTube channel.
Brilliant. And of course, the visitors can talk to you on the stand after this session in order to get some more information on that. So that's great. Thank you, Carl.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to see you on the StoryTagger stand. The team are there ready to answer questions, and I'll be there as well. And if you'd like to see StoryTagger in action, I'd be more than happy to book in a quick demo with you.
Brilliant. And one final question, Carl, from Amanda Riley. Do you have any good guidelines around recording yourself, such as lighting, positioning of the camera, that can be shared to those who video themselves at home?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a range of self-filming tips that, again, are on our YouTube channel. There's a series of, it's going to be 20 videos. I think we're up to about number 16 or 17 at the moment. And they're full of really great tips on how to film yourself. StoryTagger actually does all of this stuff in an automatic way. So it coaches people through the process of self-filming without having to think about this stuff. But in the process of developing the platform, we thought about this stuff and we shared it as little bite-sized learning pieces that everyone's welcome to use and share.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you for that, Carl. Really informative presentation. Thanks to everybody that logged in and enjoyed that presentation, and wishing you all the best for the rest of the day.
Thank you very much. And a big thanks to everyone who's come and watched. Please check us out on LinkedIn, Twitter, and all the other social channels. There's loads of good stuff that we share there. And we'd love to catch up, meet you, and have a chat wherever you care to meet us.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.